The mist was thick that morning, clinging to the headstones of Evergreen Heights Cemetery like reluctant spirits unwilling to let go. It swirled and stretched in pale ribbons across the sloping grounds, blurring the lines between the living and the dead. Dawn was just breaking over the Oregon mountains, a cold light spilling between tall pines and painting the marble markers in muted silver. Safin Adler moved with the same precision she always brought to this place. She knelt before a weathered military grave, her gloved hands arranging fresh white lilies against gray stone. There was nothing outwardly remarkable about her. Dark hair pulled back in a simple braid, a civilian jacket zipped against the chill, and boots dusted with dew. Yet there was a steadiness in her steel-gray eyes, a quiet discipline in every motion. She didn't come here to grieve aloud. She came to remember. Thaddeus Wyndham, the cemetery's longtime groundskeeper, watched from a respectful distance, rake in hand. In 30 years tending these hills, he'd learned to read the language of visitors, the restless pacing of the newly bereaved, the quiet murmurs of those speaking to loved ones, the stoic composure of soldiers' widows. Safin was different. She came once a month, always alone, always at dawn. She didn't weep, didn't linger unnecessarily, just placed the flowers, stood for a few silent moments, and left. She moved like someone who had long since made peace with loss, but refused to forget. Elsewhere on the grounds, the Ambrose family wandered among the rows of markers. Mr. Ambrose rested a protective hand on his teenage son's shoulder while his wife fussed with a vase at her mother's grave. Their voices were low, respectful, barely audible over the whisper of wind through the pine boughs. None of them saw the shadow at first, not until it detached itself from between two moss-covered mausoleums and began to take shape. Larimore Blackwell had been in those shadows for 3 nights, hiding in the oldest crypt at the far edge of the property. Every breath he took tasted of cold stone and desperation. The manhunt had been relentless since his escape from a prison transport, dogs, helicopters, roadblocks. The $2 million bounty on his head had turned every stranger into a potential informant. Sleep had been a luxury he could no longer afford. The hunger in his gut had been gnawing for days, but hunger wasn't what pushed him forward now. It was the sight of a solitary woman kneeling at a grave, the nearest vehicle parked at the far east gate. No crowds, no guards, no witnesses close enough to intervene. Just one isolated target. Perfect. Thaddeus saw him first. The rake stilled in his hands, his gaze narrowing at the gaunt figure striding through the mist. Then the Ambrose boy spotted him too, a sharp inhale of alarm slipping out before his father's arm tightened protectively. Safin noticed as well, though she gave no outward sign. Her hands did not falter in their arrangement of lilies. Her back remained turned to the approaching man. Only the slightest shift in her posture betrayed awareness. "Don't move," a voice rasped behind her, dry from thirst, but edged with menace. "Nobody needs to die here today." She turned slowly, deliberately. The sight that greeted her would have sent most people's pulse into a gallop. The man's unshaven face was drawn tight over high cheekbones, his skin pale beneath a tangle of unkempt hair. A raven tattoo twisted up the side of his neck, disappearing beneath the collar of his worn jacket. And in his right hand, a .45 caliber handgun, its barrel leveled at her chest. Safin's gaze flicked from his eyes to the weapon and back again. She did not flinch. Instead, she spoke in a voice so even it seemed to cut through the fog itself. "The authorities are looking for you, Mr. Blackwell." That made him pause. His brow furrowed. "How do you know my name?" "Your face has been on every news station in 3 states, she replied. "You should put the gun down before this escalates." His lips twisted into a humorless grin. "Lady, it escalated 3 days ago. Keys. Wallet. Now." In the periphery, Thaddeus shifted uneasily, while the Ambrose family froze in place, the mother's trembling hand gripping her son's sleeve. Safin's attention never left Larimore's face. "You're running out of time," she said, tilting her head toward the faint hum of engines approaching along the gravel drive. "Law enforcement is nearly here." A flicker of panic crossed his features before he forced it down. He gestured sharply with the gun. "Run, and they'll scrape you off the grass." She did not run. Instead, she stepped subtly sideways, placing herself between Larimore and the Ambroses. "There's a blue sedan by the east gate," she said calmly. "Keys are in my jacket pocket." The mist seemed to press closer around them, muting the sound of the approaching vehicles. Larimore's eyes darted toward the tree-line, then back to her. "You're going to walk me there." "That's fine," she said. "But first, let me send the boy away with his parents." He hesitated. Safin didn't blink. The silence between them stretched until, with a twitch of the gun, he relented. "Make it quick." She turned her head toward the Ambroses. "Go behind the mausoleum. Stay low. Stay quiet." There was something in her tone that made even Mr. Ambrose obey without question. He took his wife's hand and pulled their son away, vanishing into the fog. When Safin faced Larimore again, his gaze had sharpened. "Your stance," he said slowly. "It's military." She met his suspicion without flinching. "Just someone visiting a grave." "You're lying." "About which part?" The faint crunch of tires on gravel was closer now. Larimore's grip on the gun tightened. "We move now," he ordered, stepping closer. Safin nodded once and began walking toward the east gate, her stride measured, unhurried. Her eyes were calm, her voice low, but inside her mind the geometry of the cemetery was already mapped: distances, lines of sight, cover points. Every step brought her closer to the next move. Gravel whispered beneath tires somewhere beyond the cedar row. The sound was faint, but in the cemetery's hush it carried like a warning. Safin walked at Larimore's side toward the east gate, the mist folding around them in slow, damp breaths. His pistol rode the air between them, close enough that she could see the black steel breathe with his pulse. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he said. She obliged, palms open at shoulder height, her jacket gaping just enough to show nothing. No phone, no badge, no threat he could name. "You're dehydrated," she said quietly. "And you haven't slept." "You auditioning to be my medic?" His smile didn't make it to his eyes. Save the bedside manner. 100 feet back, Thaddeus had stopped pretending to rake. He stood with both hands on the tool's worn handle, gaze flicking from Safin to the road. The Ambroses slipped behind a mausoleum, a silhouette of family folded into stone shadows. The boy peered out once, only once, until his mother's hands guided his head down. The first SUV ghosted into view through the entry arch, a dark shape with lights cold and unlit. Another followed. Then 2 more. They slipped apart among the lanes like chess pieces easing into a middle game, deliberate, careful, circling. Larimore breathed out a curse. "How many?" "Enough." Safin didn't raise her voice. "If you fire, they'll return it. If you run, they'll hurt you. The only outcome you control is how quickly this ends." "You think I'm scared of them?" He had to swallow before the words came out. "I think panic is a bad strategist," she said. They reached a junction of paths where a stone angel lifted weathered wings toward the fog. Larimore angled Safin ahead of him, gun tucked under her ribs now, the muzzle's cool circle a constant reminder. The view to the gate opened between cedars. Her blue sedan parked alone, the chain-link fence beyond it glistening with beads of mist. "Keys," he said. "In my right pocket." She watched his eyes, not his hands. When he nodded, she moved slowly, fingers closing around the key fob. She palmed it and held it up. "You want to test the panic button? You think I'm an amateur? I think you're tired." She let the fob hang from 2 fingers, neutral, the offer without challenge. He plucked it from her hand. His thumb whitened on the rubber button, then eased. He slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Walk," he ordered. They took 3 more steps before a voice called out, level and carrying just enough authority to ride the mist. "Larimore Blackwell." A man's baritone measured. "This is Special Agent Quillen Rhodes. Put the weapon down and keep your hands visible." Larimore jerked Safin closer, pivoting to put her between him and the sound. His focus scattered, trying to pin its source among the monuments. The voice came again, slightly left, behind the angel. "No one wants you hurt," Rhodes said. "We can work this out." Larimore pressed the muzzle harder into Safin's side. "Tell them to back off." Her reply was calm enough to sound like routine. "He wants space to the vehicle." "We're listening," Rhodes said. Footsteps did not move. "Mr. Blackwell, help me help you. Lower the weapon, and we talk." Larimore's breathing ratcheted up, too fast, too shallow. "You lower your guns," he shouted. "That's my condition." "That's not going to happen," Rhodes answered. "But we can make concessions." A pause, a rustle of radios, quietly answering radios. "A vehicle can be brought closer, if we feel this is moving in the right direction." Safin tilted her head, the slightest acknowledgement of a move accepted. "You see? There's a path if you don't slam the door." "Stop talking like you're not the one I'm holding," Larimore hissed. He shifted his stance, legs too wide, shoulders high with tension. The gun wavered a hair, enough to confirm what she'd catalogued. Tremor, fatigue, adrenaline cresting. "Thaddeus," she called without turning her head. "Stay put." "I ain't moving, miss," he answered, the rake suddenly sounding like a promise instead of a tool. Across the lanes, dark shapes took their positions. A woman agent with her weight on the balls of her feet near a granite cross. Another crouched behind a line of low hedges. Someone else ghosting between obelisks to extend the perimeter. Their weapons stayed shouldered, muzzles tracking, but no one advanced. "Mr. Blackwell," Rhodes said, his voice closer now, but still conservatively placed. "We need show of good faith. Release the woman." Larimore barked a raw laugh. "Sure. Let me just hand you the only leverage I've got." "It's not your only leverage," Safin said, so gently it almost sounded like she believed it for him. "You still have choice. You keep using that word." He tightened his left arm across her collarbone, pulling her in until she could feel his ribs against her back. He smelled like damp wool and sleepless nights. "Choice is long gone." "Then control what you can," she said. "Slow your breathing. Lower your shoulders. Don't let your vision tunnel on the gun sights." She said it like instruction from some forgotten class, steps to a task done 1,000 times. "That mouth," he muttered. "You always talk like this at a funeral?" "Only when someone brings a pistol." Silence rippled outward, broken by the soft ping of a cooling engine from one of the SUVs, the tick-tick-tick counting seconds. A crow called twice from a Douglas fir. The mist thinned a fraction. 2 gray beams of daylight laced the lane, creating bright bars across the asphalt like lines drawn on a chalkboard. Rhodes stepped into one of those bars, hands visible, weapon down, but not relinquished. He had the squared shoulders of a former military man and the patience of someone who had stood in worse places. "Blackwell, I'm right here," he said. "Talk to me." "Bring a car to the gate," Larimore said, every word wired with urgency. "Keys inside. You stay 20 yards back." Rhodes tipped his chin. "We can get a vehicle rolling. But I need you to lower the weapon from a lady's head." Larimore shifted the gun upward, swapping ribs for temple. Safin didn't react. The steel found the soft hollow above her cheekbone and pressed there, cold, clinical. If the handgun had a heartbeat, it would match his. Fast, stuttering. "She's fine," he said. "She'll ride with me." "You don't need a hostage," Rhodes replied. "You need time and a lawyer." "I need out." "We both know there's no out that way," Safin said. "Stop reading me," he snapped. She let the silence sit a beat, then softer. 3 days on the run. Your hands are unsteady. That edge you had is gone. If you keep betting on fear, your hands are going to make a mistake your mind doesn't want. Something in his expression shifted, not belief, not surrender, but a painted line smudged by weather. He swallowed, eyes flicking wildly over the stones, searching for a gap, an escape arrow engraved in marble pointing away from the inevitable. Behind the angel, Rhodes lifted one hand a few inches, palm out. "Blackwell, we'll move a car. You keep the weapon pointed down. That helps everyone. That helps you." A quiet voice crackled through a radio notch to Rhodes's shoulder, too soft to make out, just sibilance and a numeric cadence. He didn't glance at it. "Octavia," he called without looking. "Hold perimeter." "Zephyr, no shots unless we lose containment." "Yes, sir," from the hedges, a breath of sound. Larimore's grip tightened. "You're not going to shoot if I keep her close." "Correct," Rhodes said. "We're not in the business of harming civilians." His eyes touched Safin's for a fraction, a flicker of recognition he couldn't place. Something about her posture, the way her weight settled between arches and heels, hips square, chin free. He filed it away. Safin felt the shift as surely as she felt the gun. The scene had found its balance point, the fulcrum before a lever moves. Her muscles hummed with patience, not tension. She cataloged corners, the edge of a granite base 2 feet to her left, crushed gravel underfoot that would slip if someone pivoted too hard, a clipped boxwood that would slow a rush. The map in her head glowed with edges and angles. "Let the family go," she said, not as a plea, but as a checklist item. "They're already behind cover. Don't drag them further into your problem." "They're nothing to me," Larimore said, but there wasn't contempt in it, just distraction. "Then prove it," she said. "Don't point the weapon at them again." "I point it where I need," he snapped, and the muzzle twitched, only a degree, but she felt it in the bones of his forearm. Fatigue had found a pathway to his grip. Behind them, the boy made a small sound, half fear, half breath. Larimore's eyes cut that way on reflex. It took him longer than it should have to bring them back. "Look at me," Safin said, drawing his focus. "This ends with you alive if you let it. Hold on to that." "What do you get out of this?" he asked, almost curious. "You care if I live?" "I care that no one dies here," she said. "Including you." It should have sounded like a tactic. Instead, it sounded like truth, and for a sliver of a second his shoulders softened. Rhodes saw it. Octavia saw it. Even the crow went quiet. Then another SUV eased to a stop near the gate, engine idling low. A driver stayed behind the wheel, hands visible on the crown of the steering wheel, posture exaggeratedly non-threatening. The move was careful, telegraphed, almost theatrical, exactly the kind of concession you make when you need a fragile thing to hold. Larimore's breath hitched. "Keys." "In the ignition," Rhodes said, as requested. The tremor came back to the pistol. "Not much." "Enough." Larimore drew Safin 1 step, then 2, toward the lane. "We move," he said through his teeth. "Now." She went with him, letting her stride match the ragged rhythm of his. Her hands stayed up, empty. The how of what came next locked behind her stillness. For seconds can be an ocean. For seconds can be a blade. As they crossed the bright band of morning light, Safin tipped her chin fraction, aligning her sight line past the angel's wing to the obelisk beyond. Somewhere to her 8 o'clock, an agent steadied a sight he wouldn't fire. Somewhere behind her, Thaddeus lowered his rake as if lowering a flag. "Careful with the steps," she murmured, as if concerned for his footing. "What steps?" "Exactly," she said. They reached the lane. The sedan waited, blue paint beaded with moisture. Larimore angled her toward the passenger side, the muzzle sliding off bone to Nestle behind her ear. Rhodes didn't move. The team didn't breathe. "Open it," Larimore said. She set her palm to the door handle and drew a slow breath that didn't look like one. The storm had found its eye. The door handle was cold beneath Safin's fingers, slick with beads of mist. Larimore stood tight against her shoulder, the muzzle circle anchored just behind her ear. She could feel his breath, quick, uneven, against her hairline. The whole world seemed narrowed to that steel and the pounding rhythm of his chest. "Open it," he repeated. She didn't. Not yet. Instead, she angled her head toward the gate. For black SUVs had pulled fully into the cemetery now, the nearest idling 20 yards back. No sirens, no flashing lights, just dark, heavy shapes in the fog. A dozen federal agents held positions behind granite and hedge, their movements deliberate, controlled, like pieces in a slow chess match. Every gun was trained, but not a single trigger pulled. "Mr. Blackwell," Rhodes called again from somewhere behind the cover of the Stone Angel. "You've got our full attention. No one wants this to end badly." Larimore let out a short, harsh laugh. "You say that like I'm the one with options." "You've got more than you think," Rhodes replied. "Lower the weapon, step back, we talk. No one gets hurt." "You think I believe that?" Larimore's voice cracked, not with emotion, but fatigue. "You think I don't know how this works?" "I think," Safin said, her tone so calm it felt surgical. "You're exhausted, running on adrenaline that's burning out fast. And that makes you unpredictable." I'm not, he started. Your hands are shaking, she interrupted softly. Not from fear. From depletion. 3 days with no real food or rest. You know how that ends. He tightened his grip on her arm. Shut up. But he didn't move. And in that small pause, she could hear his breathing falter. Let her go, Rhodes said. Show me you're serious about walking away from this alive. You've got a lot of faith in me, Larimore muttered. No, Rhodes said. I've got faith in self-preservation. Larimore shifted, pressing the muzzle harder into Safin's head. My only way out is with her in front of me. Then you're walking toward a wall, she said. You can't shoot your way past them. And if you do, you'll never make it to the next town. You don't know what I can do. I know exactly what you can do, she replied. Her eyes never left the car window's reflection. From the angle, she could see one of the agents, short, lean, crouched behind a column at her 8 o'clock. He was lined up, but holding fire, waiting for a cue that hadn't yet come. Larimore caught her looking. What's at 8 o'clock? Nothing you need to worry about, she said. He jerked his head toward the agent. Tell him to back off. That's not how this works, Rhodes said. We're not going to drop the perimeter. You still have a path forward, but it's got to be on terms that keep everyone safe. Larimore's eyes flicked from Safin to the gate, to the agents, to the car. The indecision in his stance was louder than his words. Fine. Here's my deal. Car stays running. I get in. She gets in. I drive. You follow at a distance. You're asking us to put a civilian in a moving hostage situation, Rhodes said. That's not a deal. That's suicide. You're going to follow me anyway. At least this way, I've got insurance. No, Rhodes said flatly. I'm not negotiating. Larimore snapped. You are, Safin murmured. Every word you say is a negotiation, whether you admit it or not. He turned his head just enough to look at her. You enjoy this, don't you? Messing with me. I enjoy people walking away alive, she said. His laugh was dry, bitter. You really think I'm walking away? Yes, she said, without hesitation. But it depends on whether you start making choices instead of threats. Her calmness was the wrong kind of steady. It was unnerving, almost predatory. Rhodes saw it from his position behind cover. The tilt of her shoulders, the subtle lowering of her center of gravity, the quiet watchfulness in her eyes. She wasn't just a civilian with nerves of steel. She was trained. And she was waiting. The agents were reading it too. Zephyr's voice came low in Rhodes's earpiece. That woman knows what she's doing. She's setting something up. I know, Rhodes murmured back. Larimore's attention twitched toward the agents again. Tell them to put their guns down. That's not going to happen, Rhodes said. But I can get them to hold position. You want that? Yeah, Larimore said. Then lower the weapon from her head, Rhodes countered. Larimore hesitated, just for a heartbeat. It was enough for Safin to read the shift in his weight, the angle of his wrist, the looseness creeping into his grip. He was fraying. You're tired, she said quietly. Your hand's cramping. That trigger's heavier now than when you pick it up. Shut up. Smith & Wesson M&P, right? She continued. 14-round mag, if it's the 9mm trigger safety. You haven't engaged it. His brow furrowed, the distraction almost involuntary. How the hell? It's a detail, she said. You'd be surprised what people notice under pressure. He glanced down, instinct overriding caution. And that was the moment she'd been waiting for. Her body didn't move yet, not visibly, but in her head she counted the steps, the rotations, the pressure points. The cemetery became a geometry problem. Angles, speed, force. The only variable left was timing. Rhodes saw her shoulders lower a fraction, like a bowstring drawn just shy of release. She was close. Very close. But she didn't act. Not yet. Instead, she turned her head slightly toward Larimore, close enough that her breath would hit his cheek. You have one last chance to walk away breathing. He didn't answer. Not in words. His jaw flexed, his grip tightened, and his gaze flicked again to the nearest agent. Safin knew the next move was seconds away. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of wet earth and pine needles through the lane. Larimore's grip was too tight now. his pulse hammering into the steel frame of the pistol. Safin could feel each vibration where the muzzle touched her skin. She knew that kind of grip, desperation disguised as control. Somewhere in the mist, a crow cawed once, then fell silent. The stillness had weight to it. The agents behind cover froze in that space between heartbeat and trigger pull, all waiting for the same thing, the moment. Safin decided it had arrived. Second one. Her right hand moved first, not toward the gun, but toward his wrist, fingertips closing over bone with a grip as sudden as a lightning strike. She drove her thumb into the radial nerve, a sharp, exact pressure that short-circuited the fingers wrapped around the trigger. His hand spasmed, a burst of pain shooting up his arm. Larimore swore, the sound half-snarl, half-gasp. The pistol wavered. Second two. Her left elbow came up in a tight, controlled arc, striking the hollow of his solar plexus. Air exploded from his lungs in a wet grunt, his body folding in reflex. He staggered, knees dipping, the pistol lowering fractionally. The agents didn't move. Not yet. This wasn't their fight anymore, it was hers. Second three. Safin rotated her hips, stepping off the line of his body in one fluid shift. She twisted his wrist hard, redirecting the pistol's barrel upward. It fired once into the cold morning air, the crack shattering the mist like glass. The shot startled the crows from the treetops, a black wave lifting into the pale sky. The weapon was already leaving his hand. Second four. She pivoted behind him, her grip still locked on his wrist, momentum driving him to his knees. With her other hand, she stripped the pistol clean, magazine ejected, chamber cleared in one seamless motion. The weapon clattered harmlessly onto the damp grass at her feet. And just like that, the geometry of the fight inverted. He was no longer the threat. Larimore groaned, face pressed into the cold earth, his arm bent in a joint lock that kept him motionless. His breathing was ragged, his voice ragged her still. "What the hell are you?" Safin didn't answer. Her eyes swept the lane, checking for threats that weren't there. The agents were still frozen, their weapons raised but pointed nowhere now. "Secure, but do not harm the suspect," she called out, her voice sharp enough to slice through their hesitation. It was a voice built for command, and it made every agent move. Rhodes stepped forward, lowering his weapon as recognition finally clicked into place. "Commander Adler," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. She didn't look at him. Radial nerves compromised. He'll need medical attention for the shoulder. Two agents moved in to take Larimore, cuffing him while Safin stepped back, posture loosening for the first time since he'd appeared. She handed the cleared pistol to Rhodes, who accepted it without breaking eye contact. "I thought you retired," he said. "I did," she replied. Rhodes studied her a moment longer before giving her the kind of nod reserved for equals. "SEAL Team 8, Specialized Reconnaissance. You led the Samuran extraction in 09. "That's ancient history," she said, voice neutral. "Not to the people who learn from it." Behind them, Thaddeus emerged from behind a headstone, rake in hand, eyes wide. The Ambroses peeked out from cover, the boy staring openly at Safin, as if she'd stepped straight out of a war story. Larimore, now cuffed and hauled to his feet, shook his head at her. "I never stood a chance, did I?" "You had a choice," she said. "You still do." The words seemed to catch somewhere inside him. His posture slumped, but he didn't speak again as they led him toward the waiting SUVs. Rhodes turned back to her. "Commander Adler, your file said you disappeared somewhere in the Pacific Northwest." "Looks like it wasn't far enough," she said. He smiled faintly. "The Bureau's going to want a statement. You just pulled off a takedown that's in our training manuals." "Then you already have it," she said. "Leave my name out of the report." He hesitated. "With respect, what you did today deserves recognition." "I'm not here for recognition," she replied. "I'm here because I could be." The agents loaded Larimore into the back of a black SUV. As the vehicle pulled away, the mist began to thin, revealing the first sharp edges of daylight on the gravestones. Safin returned to the grave she'd been tending before the chaos, kneeling once more before the military headstone. She replaced the lilies she'd dropped, her movements as steady as they'd been when she arrived. The moment was already fading into the cemetery's quiet, as though it had been no more than a gust of wind disturbing the morning. Rhodes lingered a few yards away, still watching her. "That was 4 seconds," he said. She didn't look up. "4 seconds is all you ever get." The last of the SUVs rumbled out through the cemetery gates, their black shapes swallowed by the winding mountain road. In their wake, the mist had all but burned away, leaving the headstones sharp against the morning light. Only the sound of Thaddeus's rake and the whisper of wind through pine branches remained. Sapphin knelt at the same grave where her mourning had begun, the lilies reset, the marble wiped clean with the back of her gloved hand. Her movements were unhurried now, deliberate in the way of someone reclaiming stolen time. A shadow fell across the stone. Rhodes stood there, his weapon holstered, his posture less guarded, but no less observant. He didn't speak immediately, just took in the inscription. LCDR Kiran Devo, USN, SEAL Teammate. Brother. Warrior. Friend. Your teammate, he said quietly. My spotter, she replied. 8 operations together. He took a bullet meant for me in Samurin. Rhodes nodded, a soldier's understanding in his eyes. I studied that op at Quantico. It's required reading now. They call your tactics the Adler Protocol. They've probably improved on them, she said, a faint smile touching her lips. You saved lives today. That's not why I did it. He watched her a moment longer. Then why? She looked back at the headstone. Because I could. They stood in silence for a few beats, the kind that didn't need filling. A crow settled on a nearby cross, cocked its head, then lifted away into the brightening sky. The Bureau will want a statement, Rhodes said finally. And they'll want to name you. Don't. Her tone was firm, unyielding. Put it down as civilian with military background assisted in apprehension. No name. With all due respect, Commander. I'm retired, she cut in. And I'd like to keep it that way. His expression softened into something between respect and resignation. You know the press will want the story. They can have the story, she said. Not me. Rhodes exhaled slowly, then nodded. Understood. He reached into his jacket and produced a small white business card. If you ever decide retirement's not for you, the Bureau could use someone like you. She took the card without looking at it. I have a good life here. A quiet life. Exactly. By the east gate, Thaddeus leaned on his rake, watching her as though seeing her for the first time. When she passed, he gave a small nod, simple, but waited. I've been tending these grounds 30 years, he said. Never seen anything like that. Let's hope you never have to again, she replied. You come here every month. I always wondered why. He has no family left, she said, glancing back toward Kieran's grave. Someone should remember him. I'll make sure his stone's always kept clean, Thaddeus said, voice low but certain. You have my word. Thank you, she said, and meant it. Her blue sedan was right where it had been, parked and beaded with morning dew. Rhodes stood by his SUV as she approached. You'll hear from someone at the Bureau, he said, even if it's just for the paperwork. She opened her door. I'll be here, teaching wilderness skills at the community center. Volunteering with search and rescue. Nothing that makes headlines. That's the point, isn't it? He asked. She didn't answer, just smiled faintly and slid into the driver's seat. The mountain road unwound before her, the valley stretching wide in the distance. Her cabin appeared after the last bend, a modest, weathered place tucked among the pines, the kind of home that didn't ask questions and didn't give away secrets. She parked, stepped out, and paused on the porch, letting the quiet settle over her again. Inside, she hung her jacket on the wall hook. The faded SEAL Team 8 tattoo on her forearm caught the light, a mark she kept covered most days. On the mantel sat the only photograph from her old life on display. Her and Kieran, dusty and grinning in desert camo, mountains rising behind them. She touched the frame with the backs of her fingers, a small, wordless acknowledgement. From the window, she could see the town below, small, unassuming, blissfully ordinary. That was the life she'd chosen. One where she could walk to the market without a tail, sleep without checking the perimeter, spend her mornings teaching teenagers how to read topographical maps and build shelters from pine boughs. Tomorrow, she would be Safin Adler, civilian. The incident at the cemetery would shrink to a brief headline about a fugitive's capture. The name Commander Adler wouldn't appear anywhere. But for 4 seconds today, she'd been her old self again. And somewhere, if such things were possible, Kieran Devo was smiling at that. She poured herself a mug of coffee, stepped on the porch, and let the steam curl into the cool air. A lone crow crossed the sky above, heading toward the cemetery. She watched it until it vanished behind a ridgeline. A quiet life, she thought, and smiled.